Welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us to our second Road to Recovery series episodes for this year. This has been preceded with 26 episodes last year, which were every 2 weeks talking to leaders in HR, thought leaders in HR and HRDs from large and small companies to get their experience and share their knowledge and learn from it for us throughout the pandemic. Now this year, as you all know, we're focusing more on the road to recovery. I mean, you know, progress is being made, I hope. And so we're trying to focus more on how we prepare for the new conditions and the new ways of working. And today, I'd like to welcome Mark Cardy, who is the Head of Reward and HR Operations at Credit Agricole, to discuss how we formulate our HR teams and make them more productive, work better, and all this kind of stuff. So Mark, welcome. Could you give us a little introduction to what you do at Credit Agricole and what your role is and actually your history?
Yes, certainly. I have very recently joined Credit Agricole. I joined in July last year. So it was a move between companies during the pandemic. So it's been a very, very interesting start to my career at Credit Agricole. I have spent the best part of 30 years working in financial services of various descriptions across the City of London. I started in payroll, moved into HR systems, and now probably specialise in reward, and as a result have a really, really good understanding of the entire, what I will loosely call perhaps back office operations within HR. So really specialising in process re-engineering, I guess over the years in connection with major implementations of systems like PeopleSoft, like Workday. And really at Credit Agricole, the reason I was very keen to join Credit Agricole is that I now have an HRD who is very, very open to change, new ways of working, thoroughly embracing new technologies and new ways of doing things, and that was, you know, the primary reason that I joined the firm, and using a lot of experience and experiments at times, if you like, with my previous employments and teams, to bring that together and really set the foundations for operational excellence, if you like, with which to really build the HR function. So it's been an interesting time.
I mean, it is very interesting that your background in this particular thing. I'm going to explain it a little bit to those of our audience who don't understand why reward is such a critical aspect and takes so long. So my experiences in most financial services organization, reward is kind of like a half-year thing. People disappear off and start working on a really complicated combination of data from all the countries in which organizations work, then performance, and then business performance and how that's gone, and then pull this all together to work out what are quite complicated bonus and reward calculations across the industry. But it's one of the more complicated and difficult areas. So in financial services, it's always been a massive exercise. And why I'm fascinated with it is that it's so data heavy. Fairness is absolutely critical. Getting it right and getting it transparent up to a certain point is absolutely critical as well. And a large part of your working year tends to be involved with that, I think, Mark.
Absolutely, yeah. And it has been fascinating to see how that has changed over the years in terms of expanding out. There was a time when, you know, I could comfortably spend 5 days a week sitting in front of my screen with giant spreadsheets analyzing data. And I think part of the agile journey has seen reward professionals moving away from their screens, moving closer to the business, engaging more with the business, understanding, you know, beyond their own reward area into succession planning, into performance management, almost becoming, and often I see the term now where, you know, reward professionals are called reward partners, which is very much reflecting that closeness to the business, that move away from the back office, and I see very much the merging of roles within HR. I think HR, having taken on board maybe 20 years ago the kind of Ulrich model and structuring themselves in a way where we have a learning development department and a training department and a pensions area and a payroll area, etc. You are beginning to see people cross some of those areas, cross some of those functions, and I think we'll go on to speak about it later, but I think that's a lot of the reason why agile ways of working are so exciting, because we are naturally seeing that move away from your own specialists across functions within HR.
And that actually, Mark, is what I think I want to really focus on today, which is talking about agile working within HR. I know that over many years it's kind of been a passion of yours, having been in that environment of kind of like a closed door culture of sitting there with the spreadsheets, etc., and now needing to open that up and work more rapidly and more in a different way. And I'm going to, the obvious point is that the two things don't go together, which I'm going to ask you more about shortly. But for all of our audience, what I want to explain is that Mark's key passion is making HR operations work more efficiently and talking and applying agile processes to those. This is a challenge which I think most of us in our working lives have heard about and have started to think about. But Mark is unusual in that he's probably taken that further than the rest of us. So I'm really excited about talking to you today about the application of Agile to HR and where you think it works and what are the tips, etc. Because it is a difficult and critical area. One of my observations of last year is that most businesses, because of the strictures of COVID, etc., moved to a much shorter time frame, became much more agile. I think it impacted HR in particular because we were being asked to do things in 2 weeks, which might have taken months previously. The targets changed every 2 months and all this every 2 weeks and all this stuff, and we achieved those. I'm really excited about the opportunity to start incorporating that into the way we work. Henceforth, there are some positive aspects to the fact that HR has become empowered and has driven enormous changes in our business, and we've got to kind of build on those. So with that in mind, and I'd like to thank all the audience for coming and joining us today. With that in mind, I'd like to actually start on that, which is really, Mark, tell us a bit about the Agile journey. So why do you think it first started to become apparent to you that it's an important skill in HR?
That's a really good question. I think for me, as I explained, my background is payroll, and I moved into systems. So really from a very early stage in my career, I was involved in some pretty major implementations of software. Often these were 18-month projects, anything up to 3-year projects. And I guess the two major frustrations for me every time I was involved, to start with as a participant, and then over time actually leading these things, was literally the time frame, how long it took to actually implement, and the fact that the lack of improvement for the customer, for the client, for the business, for the people that you're actually there to serve. So I would often sit down with stakeholders and say, hey, in 3 years' time, we're going to have this super duper system that's going to do this and do that and do this and do this. And as you go through the project, you become very aware, and we have got better at this, to be fair. You become very aware that, if you've already developed one piece of this major 3-year project, why not put it in? Why not get those benefits in early? And I think to a certain degree, a lot of the project methodologies didn't necessarily support this kind of implementation, because you were bound to Prince type 2 methodologies where you have endless spreadsheets and you have to tick off all these milestones before you could do something. Forgive me, but we have got much better nowadays, but that's how it was, 10, 15 years ago. So I've always, within my remit, with the teams I've managed, tried to very much concentrate on that continuous improvement thing, and at least try and put the benefits that we've developed to the business earlier.
I mean, it is interesting because it does come from a technology background. It was that technology which led those technology programs, etc., which led to the original development of the Agile methodology. Because I think that you've talked about the 3 years, but it was kind of worse than that, Mark. It was 3 years before you knew whether it was any good or not. So it would be kind of like
very true.
3 years of work, and then ta-da! Here is the beautiful thing. And you know what? Sometimes it wasn't so beautiful, and then it would be, and that was the killer, which is how do we generate the accountability at each stage on the program to make sure that the thing is still relevant, etc.
Absolutely.
And then those technologists came up with the idea of breaking down those programs, as we probably all know, into kind of 2-week exercises in which you're only really looking at the next few weeks of activity and targeting those. And but how do you apply that to HR? It's a very different thing. We're providing a continuous service, Mark. So translating one into HR is kind of a bit of a leap.
It is a leap, and that is comfortably the pushback. The biggest pushback I get from the HR arena and from HRDs in particular is that we are a people business. We're not a process business. We're not a technology area. We're not manufacturing. Yet at the same time, I will sit down in senior HR management meetings and we'll talk about the performance process, the compensation process. There are endless processes. Onboarding, induction. There are endless processes within HR that we can apply some of these agile mechanisms, and I don't really want to get too much into the technical aspect of agile or lean or any of those things, because I think that's kind of irrelevant. And I will probably say many times during this discussion that one of the biggest things I've learned is that you do need to find your own agile and your own version of that. And if I can, I'll just give you a very quick example of a unit I was working alongside in a previous employment that had gone through some tough years. They had been part of an organization that was constantly downsizing, constantly up against various internal pressures over a period of about 10 years. They got a new COO, very agile focused, and he came on board and he made a very simple declaration to the team to get the team on board. And he said, I'm going to take you down this lean agile route. Effectively, what I can guarantee you, he said, well, his words were very much, I can't guarantee you employment, but I will guarantee you employability. And he took them through this kind of lean journey. And now, that operational team over a period of about 4 years have become an award-winning team, a team where the head office now is moving work to the branch because they have improved so incredibly. And I think that one example, more than anything, working very closely with that particular team, I saw the benefits of transferring some of those working practices into HR. And what was interesting is that they used
an HR team, Mark.
That wasn't HR. That was an operations team. Yeah, that was an operations team. So that's the first time I'd witnessed it being done outside of IT, if you like. So operations, they took elements of IT and IT practices, moved it into operations, and then adapted it. And I've pretty much done the same thing. I've taken that learning and I've brought it into the workplace where I am now, and I've said, okay, I think I can adapt this further. based on the sorts of things that I've done historically in the past, which have been centered around continuous improvement. So I like to have the teams working with me, working in circles, if you like. I did it first with the payroll team. So I had 3 payroll assistants working with me once upon a time. And we literally set up the team. We split all the work we had to do in the team into 3 areas. And then every 3 months, we rotated those 3 areas between the officers and the team. And the challenge to each of them was to take, if you were doing levers and you'd just taken over from someone else that had been doing levers for 3 months, how could you improve that process? So by the end of the next 3-month period, what I wanted to see was some improvement, whatever it is, small or big, didn't matter, but really wanted to introduce that concept of continuous improvement, which is one of the very key things in any agile working area.
So, Mark, there's a great question which has just come in from one of our watchers, which is, what are the key principles to adapt to HR? Now, my thought is that as we talk, we should try and identify what those key principles are. And I've already picked up, and I hope this is going to answer this question, but I've also picked up the first point you've made, which is actually, this is not a slavish application of agile principles. You're not sending people off for agile courses and making them black belts in agile. You're actually making your own agile. It's taking the principles and deploying them in a way which works within your own HR function. So making your own agile, I think I'm picking up as a key principle for success. Then I really loved the second, or a point which you made halfway through, which is focusing on the team's confidence in terms of their employability rather than their employment. So the tools and skills they're picking up makes them infinitely more adaptable and better at working. And I really love that as a principle as well. Mm-hmm. Go, Mark.
I was going to say, yeah, very much so. Totally agree. As you can imagine, with those old big system implementations, the nightmare scenario that you spend 3 years on a project, you introduce something and it fails in some way, shape, or form, which without doubt all things do. I would say that probably everything I've tried to introduce in the agile way, in the agile world, has failed in some part. That's the whole point of the continuous improvement, and I'll give you an example of that at the moment. But you can see the difference with the teams. If you're working on a project and every couple of weeks or every month or every quarter, you are introducing a part of that project to the business, you see the reaction from the business, you see the benefits, you see the more immediate benefits of the speed of working and that introduction. And that just motivates the team further. It's like, we've done this little bit, and I can go on to how we do the mechanics of how we actually do that. And you can see the difference in the team between immediately seeing the benefits of that success and their work versus those long time frame projects that don't necessarily reap the reward in the end.
So I'm loving that. So motivation by seeing the results as a third or principle. I've got one which you touched on there, which I'm really interested in, which is this idea of tolerance of things not being perfect. Now, this was a revolutionary principle in the technology side, but I see it as a really interesting dimension in HR. We're all used to for example, if somebody said, look at creating a new job framework for a particular division of the business, we're all used to the world where I would then go away for 12 months or maybe 2 years. I would engage my stakeholder and I would make that thing absolutely perfect. We would test it with each dimension. We would try and think of all possible criticisms or concerns about it. And then we would try and launch it on the business. And usually we'd then find out what we hadn't thought and worked out on. Now, it strikes me that over the last 9 months, because we've all had to react much faster and basically do stuff with our businesses, that tolerance for and understanding that you can put things out which are not 100% perfect has kind of increased and even seeped into the HR division. But do you think that's right? I think it's
for me, as you can imagine, as a big champion of these ways of working, it's been a revolution, and it's been having changed employer during this period. So you have the benefit of being fresh. You get certain license to make comments and to try and improve things. But yes, it's been fantastic for me to be able to turn around to the business, to my colleagues, the HRD, and say, look, here's an example. You don't now have to rely, you now don't have to trust in my opinion. Look how fast you reacted to the fact we're now all working from home. On something like the induction day, the typical Monday when new joiners turn up in the morning, we go through a sequence of getting their security pass done, logging onto the systems, all those things. All of a sudden we're working from home on the Wednesday, and that induction's still got to happen on the Monday.
Yeah.
So we're all sitting around, we're all on a call saying, okay, oh dear, what are we going to do? We need to get those core mechanics in. What's the most important things that we need to do on that Monday morning? We need to get the person access, and we need the security sorted. So by that first Monday, all we really had in place was those 2 or 3 things. It was like the absolute 100% necessary. By the following Monday, when the next induction day comes on, that had been expanded. By the Monday after that, and then all of a sudden 2 months in, yes, you had a process that was infinitely better than the way it was 3 or 4 weeks earlier. And yes, you are absolutely right that we were able to do that in many ways because we had the tolerance of everyone around us. Yeah. No one was going to criticize us. If we managed to get it done in any way, shape, or form, everyone was going to say, job well done. So we had lost that fear, and I think HR does suffer somewhat from that fear, and often feels very under pressure from the business to deliver something that's perfect first time. So I think for many, many reasons, we do now have an opportunity on the back of this crisis. A lot of proof of concept of these agile working practices have happened without people going on courses, without people becoming specialists. They're naturally doing it.
Yes, and also at the lowest level. So there's a question in about how important it is to kind of allow agility to occur at the lowest level of interactions of staff with customers. When I think about that from an HR perspective, that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing that, for example, a conversation with a colleague who may need something to allow them to work or something like that. During the last 9 months, we've got to a point where we just say, yes, go and do it. This chair is really uncomfortable, go and buy another chair. Whereas if we went back 12 months even, and it is only 12 months, it would have been, I will go and check the company policy on that and find out the ones which are available to you and which ones you can have and all that kind of stuff, and then maybe modify their and it doesn't quite fit that criteria. That all got thrown away. That was if you are unable to work and you are, in a physically stressed position or whatever, then go and do that thing, go and get that thing, that piece of equipment on its way to you, just order it yourself, whatever it is. Don't worry about that's up that, obviously to a different extent in different companies. But I think that is incredibly empowering for both sides of the conversation. It is, you know better than anyone what you need to make your work better. So I totally think that's a key part of this, which is moving decision making to a lower level as well, so that it's happening at multiple tiers. I remember calling my chief, the head of the firm, and saying to them, oh, is that in policy or something like that? And they're like, well, why the hell are you asking me this? What do I care? If the person needs it, they need it. And I think that's really exciting. And I think that there's a bit of that as well, giving greater autonomy as well. Is that right, Mark, or is that not true in a big organizations such as?
No, I think it's absolutely right. I think that empowering leadership is hugely key to the whole subject matter. And as I say, it's been really refreshing to see through absolute need people who previously have said to me, we can't do agile in HR, performing in a very agile way, and recognizing that that's what they're doing. I think for those businesses, for those companies that are brave enough to have this empowerment, fostering the development of the skills of their teams, working cross-functionally, cross-training, they will see they will reap the benefits of higher engagement, speeding up the delivery to the business, and it's going to be really interesting to see. We have now been given by the government a roadmap to see us out of this crisis, and it's going to be very interesting for the future of the workplace. Whether we return to the office, whether we work from home, or whether there is a hybrid of the two. I think that if we have continued down this road of empowerment and developing the teams and finding a way of working, an agile way of working, if you like, that fits the organisation and culture, I think those organisations will be in a far better position to move forward at the end of the crisis.
In a moment, I'm going to move the conversation a bit more into the mechanical dimensions of this. What are the pieces we need to put in place and that stuff. But the second thing, which one of the questions is pointing out, is how that leads to more effective co-creation. So those conversations are creating kind of policy. And I was, from my perspective, I was thinking about that very conversation about the needing equipment at the home and then immediately deciding that, of course, they could have it. But it actually led to a further thought, which was, if that's true of this person, then it's possibly true of other people. So then it was a question of using that mini conversation, which was about something really specific and tiny about an individual's capacity, and then opening that up to the whole firm. It was, look, this person's finding that their microphone's not working on their machine, so all of the machines, everyone else, you can have that, or whatever it is. This is so fundamentally different from the way we were working 12 months ago, where we'd have had to have a policy statement on the allowance of people's, tiny changes. And it was centralized decision making gone mad. It was, this is the definition of a centralized economy, where the only person who could decide whether someone could, buy an extra bus ticket was the CEO. That's kind of crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's as I say, it's very refreshing to see that change in leadership, if you like. I work in central London, so as we were beginning to go into lockdown, there was lots of visions of people pushing their chairs from the office through the barriers at the train stations and onto trains. People carrying big screens, all sorts of things in order to achieve that. A fantastic job, absolutely fantastic job by many IT departments, that were rapidly building laptops and getting screens and equipment and technology out to people, and a real coming together of the different functions within the departments. I think we saw a lot of fantastic collaboration between legal departments, compliance departments, HR, IT, all the support functions to support, again, talking very much from the industry I work in, but supporting our front office workers who, at the company I'm currently working at, have remained in the office for the entirety of this crisis. They've continued to work from office. They've not been allowed to work from home. So they have needed a lot of support from a lot of areas. And that has been, as always in times of crisis, you do see people, the country, in various different ways, whether it's supporting the NHS or supporting the people we work with, coming together and breaking down previously held barriers, rules and regulation or red tape. Perhaps it just doesn't matter in that moment. There are obviously a lot of regulatory requirements, a lot of legal requirements that do need to remain in place, and for very good reason. And we need to make sure that we apply those as well. But taking that sensible approach, empowering people lower down the hierarchy to make decisions on their own. I think these are all the reasons why companies that have performed better, I think, are showing this kind of leadership and showing these kind of ways of working, which is why I am obviously wanting to embrace, wanting to come and speak to you about the sorts of things that we're doing, so that hopefully I can promote or just change thinking. I'm going to be the first one that says I don't think for 1 minute everyone should be going out getting their black belts in lean or becoming agile practitioners, but just take the opportunity to reflect on all the good stuff that has happened over the last year, and take the learnings from that and move forward. And I think the collaboration with the customer, with the employee, the business is really, really key here. A lot of HR business models will show you, the employee experience is at the heart of what we do. We're client centric, we're very business. I would say to them, make sure you really live and breathe that. Historically, HR has a bad habit of, listening to the business complain about something, and as you say, then taking that subject, going away for a year, coming back and going, ta-da, I've solved it. Keep them on board, have a member of the business involved in the projects, part of a focus group, in pilots, have employee champions, even invite members of your customers onto the project team, so that you can keep that collaboration.
So Mark,
get the alignment.
I've been trying to answer our first question about the principles all the way through, and I've come up before we move on to the technical challenges and how we do this on the ground. I want to kind of replay to you what I think are 4 principles which I have learned from our conversation, which I think is worth just mentioning. The first of those, the first thing which came out was generating a culture in which you're seeing motivation, or generating motivation by people seeing the results of their work quickly. And I think that, to me, has really come out strongly as a key principle. I think another one is focusing on employability and not employment. So team members who are themselves autonomous and brilliant, rather than the job they do. I think that I really like the principle of there being a need for tolerance for things not being perfect. And I think that is very interesting dimension. And then finally, the one which you actually mentioned first, which is actually building your own agile. So creating an agile mechanism which works within your business. And I'm really, that's not all of the things we've talked about, and definitely not all of the principles, but they're the 4 which have really kind of struck me today. And I hope that's useful for our audience. So in actually doing it, Mark, how do you actually do it? I mean, do you guys meet in the scrum every 2 weeks or something like that? We all heard this terminology, or is it more, how does it mechanically, do you make it work amongst your teams?
We do, yeah. We don't call it scrum. What basically I have done since I arrived at the new company, and again, this is based on experimental and learning from previous experiences where things haven't gone so well or have gone well. I've tried to force change in structures and things like that before, which haven't always worked for various reasons. But I sat down this time with my HRD and said, look, I think from my experiences of working in HR previously, I think we are better off heading down a route of evolution rather than revolution. Let's not go in for a big change that's going to maybe frighten people. We are in a very difficult period anyway. So rather than me suddenly turning up out of the blue, new to the company and saying, going down that ta-da route, this is our new agile way with scrums and a lot of terminology and technology, I think would probably frighten people. We said, let's do it on a continuous improvement basis. Let's sit down and say, we think this is the governance that we need to work within the department to start generating the behaviors and some of the principles that we've talked about. So we set about very simply setting a meeting structure, if you like, that we would adhere to. So we decided, and none of this is going to be revolutionary to anybody that's listening. I'm sure many of you do this already. So we sat in place and said, okay, we're going to have 4 quarterly meetings, one of which will serve as an annual meeting, and that annual meeting we had in January this year. We are going to have monthly meetings, what we are effectively loosely calling steering group meetings, and they meet once a month. And then we have what we call huddles, which are the scrums, the stand-ups that you would have in the office. We call them huddles. And the way we've done that, and I'll build from the huddles upwards, if I may. The huddles originally were going to be 10 minutes every single morning at 9 o'clock. What we did was we split the department into 3 areas, and these have become our agile teams, if you like. So we looked at what was your primary role in the department. So if typically within an HR department, you have those that are there on an advisory basis, you have those that are there doing administration of various descriptions, and then you have the middle group, your pension managers, your payroll managers, your people like myself, who are there to design new products, to provide solutions to the business based on the problems. So we have 3 teams that work in those huddles. There's around 6 to 11 people in each of those huddles. And as I say, originally it was 10 minutes every day. After 2 weeks, we reviewed that. Everyone said they didn't like that. They thought it was too much too often, it was too repetitive. And we have settled on, we went through a couple of iterations, but we've settled on, we have 2 15 minutes a week, one on a Tuesday, one on a Thursday. Each person has between 1 minute and 2 minutes to speak, and the agenda is a very strict one. It is centered on victories from yesterday. What have I got to do today? And do I see any blockers down the line? I act as host for each of those huddles in order to make sure that there's continuity between all of them, and I inform at the beginning of the huddle all the other huddles on what we have talked about and discussed. Very importantly, those meetings are not for solutions. It's not there. If someone turns around and says, I've got a problem, it's not for that to be discussed in that minute. That is then taken out and discussed by the design team, or we approach that differently. So that creates the kind of day-to-day conversation, the learning. Some of the other things that were very important with the teams: trust, confidence to speak openly in front of people, confidence to turn around and say, I'm struggling, I need help. And it's very, very easy within that team. And again, learning from the situations that we had last year. We have a team of 11 administrators in the office. We have a learning development administrator. We have some HRAs working with the business partners. We have payroll assistants. All of a sudden they come together, and the HRAs say, we're really busy at the moment. We've got to produce all these letters. We're in the middle of our compensation review. We need to get all these things uploaded. We need this communication. Yet you've got some of the HRAs that are sitting there, you're not with a lot to do, because this is not their busy time of the year. Their busy time of the year comes later on. So they're all putting their hands up saying, well, throw some across to me. I can do some analysis. I can do some filing. I can do some of this. So it improves that collaboration, which helps the trust, which fosters that motivation between the team.
It's very fascinating. It's so basic and yet so revolutionary at the same time. This is radically different from the way our teams often work.
A lot of that, we were not too prescriptive about the huddles to start with, because a lot of it was just about collaboration. It was people, when I first joined, as you can imagine, joining the company, I spoke to everyone in the department on the phone or from a meeting. And what I was getting through very strongly was the fact they massively missed that interaction in the office. They missed that ability just to walk across the office and say to someone, hey, I've got a bit of a problem here, and they interact. All of a sudden, everyone was retreating within themselves and saying, well, if I've got a problem, it's down to me to sort out. What the huddles have done initially, much to my surprise, I wasn't really expecting the collaboration to improve quite as quickly as it did. Got people talking again and replicated what a lot of people, I think, were really at that time and this is now, I joined in the summer, so we're now talking about August, September last year. People had gone past that almost excitement of working from home and the ability to do that, and we're getting into the what we're actually missing from not being in the office. And we saw that kind of cycle of emotions last year.
And yet you found that getting the unstructured approach, you needed to apply a certain amount of structure with each person getting 15 minutes, and that made them stronger.
Yeah, 2 minutes within the 15 minutes. So everyone has to be pretty quick. So they have three things to say. These are the things that have been successful. And then obviously what I'm looking for as hosting the meeting is the Tuesday model, the people who are publicly, and this was important as well, because when you sit there and say, today I'm going to do this, come Thursday, people are expecting to hear the victories from that. And if we don't hear the victories from that, so if someone says on the Tuesday, well, over the next couple of days, I'm doing X, Y, and Z, and by the time you come to Thursday, you're thinking to yourself, well, what happened to those things that you were doing? Then it's very quick for me to turn around and say, okay, what stopped you doing that? What was the blocker? What held you up? What was the curveball? What was the interruption? And again, it's taking that learning, taking that understanding, reinvesting that into the teams, into the other huddles. And in fact, as you said earlier, taking that learning beyond HR and into the other teams and saying, well, actually, if the topic happens to be a piece of communication that hasn't worked well, we can take that to the communication department and say, well, is this something that you could use for the wider teams?
We've got a comment from one of the audience who has worked at BA, and really about how they were sharing knowledge of the development of almost a company history and the tips, which were then allowing people to share. And I guess capturing what people are doing well is partly captured by these victories, presumably, and presumably colleagues learn from each other of that when they say that worked really, that conversation or the way I approached this worked really well, then presumably that is automatically sharing it without making a complex mechanism to share it.
It's absolutely twofold. I think HR departments are notoriously bad at celebrating their victories. I give you a great example. We had a particularly difficult month on payroll going over Christmas with various inputs to the payroll that month. And the young payroll administrator came on the huddle and turned around and said, oh, no victories this week. And I said, whoa, hang on a minute. I said, payroll ran, didn't it? And he said, yes. I said, were there any problems? No.
That's pretty good.
Hey, given how we're working, what we're doing, the fact that we went through a December pay period that we've never done all from home before, and virtually nothing went wrong to my knowledge, that's a huge victory. We should really take just a moment out just to say, hey, let's pat ourselves on the back here.
Very pertinent on the 25th of the month as well, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine the engagement with the wider firm if we hadn't paid everybody, during the Christmas month? It would have been devastating. So, let's celebrate that. And so both as a motivation and a celebration of the work, it's very important.
We've got a few minutes left, and
okay.
My next question actually comes from the audience again, and it's really, how are you going to make this stick? So everyone's been away from the office, they're learning these new habits, you're seeing great results from them and developing them as it goes, but how are you going to maintain this and avoid us all slipping back into the way we used to work, and as things move into the new normal?
Yeah, I think it's a proof of concept. Just stepping on from the huddles, we then have monthly steering group meetings, and that meeting is where we get the empowerment piece. So you can imagine the quarterly meetings and the annual meetings are setting the agenda for the year, and they are setting the work for the following quarter. But the steering group is effectively the key people from the project streams for that quarter. So it can be anyone in the office. It's not just senior members of staff. And again, that empowerment, we are beginning to see the enjoyment from the employees. And the employees are massively engaged. We are measuring that engagement, and we are measuring the confidence. So they're the two measures that we're doing, that we started in January, after our January meeting. We simply asked everyone in the department, on a scale of 1 to 10, what is your confidence in our plans and what we're doing? And secondly, what is your engagement with what we're doing? The engagement was very high, up in the kind of mid-80s, I think, %, and the confidence was a little lower. I think from some of the members of staff that have been there for longer periods of time, I think there's an element of cynicism. We've seen these kind of changes before, and therefore they are very worried about how we are going to do these kind of project pieces of work, how we're going to do these agile pieces of work alongside the BAU. And I think this is very important in terms of the governance structure. Is one of two things that we've done is to visually have a governance map and visually have a BAU calendar, so that we can keep the two together. And it is going to be a case of continuously improving, continuing to go back to the staff and saying, what do you want to do to improve what it is that we've done so far?
Right. I completely
And that's how I want it to stick.
So in that classic way, by aligning top-down governance and instructions coming from the top in the quarterly and the monthly, then the bottom-up stuff from the huddles moving into those, you're generating a momentum which is very hard to break, because that demand top is going to continue, but that generates the month in, month out energy towards the huddle process, etc. I think that's a great answer, Mark. That really sounds convincing to me. I mean, it's critical that we learn. We've been through such a big journey over the last 9 months, all of our businesses. It's critical that we try and retain what are the good elements of what has been a really tough time. Now, there's one more question which we can take a look at before we finish today, and that is, and that's really for things like transformation projects. How can we weave agile HR ways of working in? So I guess what that means is that it's all very well getting the day-to-day working in this route, etc. But people are making substantial changes to their business and causing transformation. So how do you weave in new, transformational elements, big changes into this way of working, Mark? Is it one and the same, or is it a separate structure?
No, I think it is. I think it is one and the same. I think developing the teams in a multi-skilled way, so having them involved in cross-area projects, giving them the ability to voice their opinion at the likes of steering groups, huddles. I think you then start to develop teams that are better capable of leading through these transformational changes. So I think it is just a continuation of what it is that we're trying to do. And with any changes that we make, to break them down into smaller components. I think the biggest danger we have is going back to that, let's put ourselves in the cupboard, let's take ages to do something, work very closely with the business that you're doing. And I think, a lot of my work at the end of the day is around trying to achieve operational excellence. I'm trying to eliminate as much of the administration and the frustration that we have in HR out of it, so that we can all spend time, the whole HR department can spend time on the value add, on truly partnering with the business, and being able to work in partnership with the business on these kind of transformational changes. So, the first step, the real key to the Agile first step for me is going back to the basics, achieving that operational excellence, and then upon which we can build everything else. So
that is a brilliant point at which to draw our conversation to a close, Mark. I know you and I could talk about this all morning.
I look forward to us being able to get ourselves a drink somewhere and doing that again. Yeah, I miss it.
What I think is that, and what I've picked up, and before we close, I'd just like to say, I actually believe that given that this crisis of the last 9 months has been an HR crisis, it's been HR who has been on the front line at each level, I think that this is going to generate the largest change in the way HR works since really the Ulrich model was invented, which frankly is almost 25, 30 years ago.
Yeah, it is.
So it may well be, timely as well. I think that the dimensions of Agile are a key part of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to commit to documenting some of the conversation we've had today, and trying to work out and trying to put a paper on the Buran website really about the practical dimensions of using Agile in HR, as well as the key principles which we discussed today, which I'd love, Mark, to share with you and get your input to as well, because it's been
more than happy.
It's been a fantastic, inspirational conversation this morning, and I'd like to thank you for your time and input, and really being so insightful in this area. It's been really helpful to me, and I hope it has to our audience too. And I'd like to thank everybody else for taking time out this morning and coming and joining us. And I hope it's been a useful and productive use of your time. So thank you, everybody. And thank you again, Mark. Our next event is on the 25th of March. And so I'll be sending you details of that. So thank you, everybody, and speak soon. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you very much.